Today, I'm going to give you a quick and dirty 3-step guide to learning any scale you want all over the guitar. Now, of course, you can get very elaborate with learning scales if you want, but if you follow the 3 steps I'm going to show you with any scale you practice, you'll be able to confidently say, I know this scale when somebody asks you about it, and more importantly, you'll be able to use this scale anytime you want in a real-life musical situation. And before we get into the 3 steps, there are 2 things you've got to know, 2 big reasons why so many guitar players are so hopelessly confused when they practice scales. And the first of these problems is learning way too many scales way too quickly. See if this sounds familiar. Say you hear about some scale you've never heard of before, let's say melodic minor. So you go to Google and you type in melodic minor scale and a pattern shows up starting on the obligatory 5th fret. So you learn the pattern, you play it up and down a few times, and does that mean you now know the melodic minor scale? No, it doesn't. Because the pattern you just learned, you can't do anything with it. You can't play a solo with it, you can't write a song with it, you can't write a riff with it, nothing. Unless you can play the scale that you just learned all the way from the open low E string all the way up to the highest fret on the highest string on your guitar, you don't really know it. But many people, once they learn a tiny little fragment of a scale like this, they think they're done. And it's so easy and so tempting to learn a dozen more scales like this, and before you know it, you've learned, or it seems like you've learned, a whole bunch of things that you can't do anything with. That's a big problem we got to overcome. The second problem you may have if you're a little bit more advanced and you know that there's more to learning a scale than just practicing one little fragment that pops up into Google when you type in the name of the scale, is only seeing isolated fragments or isolated shapes of the scale. Your goal when you're learning scale shapes and scale patterns is to see how they snap into place and cover the whole fretboard. And ultimately, the ultimate level of knowing a scale is when you can visualize that scale over the fretboard the same way as a great piano player visualizes a scale on the fretboard. Only guitar players think and talk about shapes and patterns. Piano players don't talk this way. They think scale, what are my notes, and there they are. They see the whole keyboard as one giant scale shape. And that is exactly how you need to see the whole fretboard. So here are the 3 quick and dirty steps to learning any scale on guitar. Step 1. Know the notes. That means know the notes of the scale you're trying to learn, and you better know the notes all over your fretboard as well so you can find the notes in the next step. If you haven't been practicing memorizing your fretboard, you're missing out. You better make some time for this during your practice routine. If you want some help with building a practice routine, check out my video on this topic right here. Step number 2. Once you know the notes of the scale you're trying to learn, the next step is to find those notes on all 6 strings in one shape, going from the 6th string to the 1st string, using some type of shape framework that makes sense. And what I mean by makes sense is a shape that is easy enough for you to remember and, most importantly, easy for your fretting hand and for your picking hand to play reliably and consistently with the least amount of effort. For instance, if you're practicing pentatonic scales, the easiest way to play them from the 6th string all the way up to the 1st string is using 2 notes per string. This doesn't require any crazy stretches for your fretting hand, and it's pretty easy for your picking hand to keep up as well. This is where the famous A minor pentatonic shape that everybody knows comes from. And when you're learning 7-note scales like major scales, natural minor, harmonic minor, melodic minor, and so on, for those scales I use 3-note per string patterns. Why 3-note per string? Because they're way easier for your picking hand to learn because you're using the same consistent motions on every string, and they're very easy for your fretting hand to play as well. For example, with harmonic minor, where the notes are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G sharp, 3-note per string pattern would look like this. We covered all 6 strings playing 3 notes per string in a harmonic minor after finding the notes first. So we've just done step 2. Now we've got to extend these scales all the way up and down the guitar. So if we use a 7-note scale, for example, like our A harmonic minor that we used as the example, there are 7 notes in the scale. That means there's a shape you can play starting on each note of the scale. The one that we played started on the 1st note, which is note A, but if you move it up, you start the same scale on the 2nd note, on B, and that's going to look like this if you play the same 7 notes. And your task is to find all 7 of these shapes. So we've found the first one starting from the 1st note. We found the second one starting from the second note. Now you've got to find one from the third note, fourth note, fifth note, sixth note, seventh note, and the first note, and then continue climbing all the way up and also cover these frets as well. If you have a hard time with this, go back to step one and learn your fretboard better, because knowing the notes on the fretboard is the foundation for finding where the patterns are. And once you know the fretboard, or the better you know the fretboard, the easier it is to work out the scale shapes to play. This process, even though there's only 3 steps, knowing the notes, finding them on guitar in some workable scale shape, and extending that scale shape up and down the guitar, may very well take you a couple of weeks or maybe even a month to go through. That's fine. Let it take as long as it takes, because at the end, you'll have a true working knowledge of the scale. Now you'll be able to do something with what you know, whether it's jamming with your friends or writing your own music. Now the scale isn't going to be some theoretical piece of knowledge you found on Google. Now it's going to be something you can actually use, and that is what effective practicing, in this case of scales, is all about. And now you can also see why some guitar players build their whole careers of only a handful of scales. Because once you truly deeply master even one scale, you can do amazing things. You can write a lot of music with just one scale, with just a handful of notes, if you can find them all over the guitar instantly. And of course, after you go through these 3 steps, there is more you can do to deepen your knowledge of the scale, like practicing it on one string, practicing it on string pairs, practicing it diagonally, and a whole bunch of other ways. But that's not the topic of this video. I want to give you the most quick and dirty bread and butter things you can use right now to learn any scale and have it under your fingers in a usable way that you can use as quickly as possible before we start getting into the weeds with all these other more advanced ways. And after you know, let's say, the major scale all the way up and down the fretboard, what you can do with it, besides the musical application of playing solos and so on, is use the scale as the ultimate guitar technique improvement exercise. You can improve literally every aspect of your technique simply by playing your scale up and down. Everything from picking hand efficiency, fretting hand efficiency, synchronization, articulation, string noise control, tension control, and a whole bunch of other things, simply by playing the scale up and down and focusing on the area of playing you're trying to improve. You can do this using something I call focus rotation, and I have a video on this topic right here, and it shows you how you can add all these elements of technique into a little checklist, and using focus rotation, cover all of them in a span of just 10, 15, or 20 minutes of practicing. And if you do this the way I show in that video, you can very often improve after just 15 minutes, the way most people improve after a whole hour. So there you have it, a quick and dirty guide to learning scales all over your guitar. If you want more help with maximizing the progress out of whatever practice time you've got, hit the link below. I'm going to show you 5 of my biggest guitar playing and progress accelerators that I found over almost 20 years of playing and teaching guitar. They show you how to take whatever amount of time you've got and start improving way faster than you ever thought was possible. So check it out, it's free, hit the link below. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell so you're notified every time I upload new videos just like this for you. This is Mike Filipov, guitar practice expert from PracticeGuitarNow.com. I'll see you next time.